Greetings, Joseph Kursky here with you to look at crime and other data with Business Analyst Web. Business Analyst Web is a tool bundled with data from Esri. It runs in the cloud, nothing to install. Let's make some color-coded maps. Let's zoom in on Washington, D.C. And if I choose the variable that I want, let's take a look at crime. We've got, as in the case of many other variables in here, we've got the ability to drill down and, in this case, look at some fairly grim statistics of crime patterns. And I'm looking at indexes. I can look at percentages, I can look at raw numbers, but I'm going to look at the index. So the national average here, according to this data, it's always important to look at the data source, is 100. So if I grab these slider bars to the right, I can see the areas. In this case, I'm looking at motor vehicle theft index by block group, and it's important to pay attention to the level of geography, the block group, census tract, zip code, county, state, etc. And notice in the upper right it says USA. I can get some data for many countries around the world. But here we're zooming in on the USA and specifically Washington, D.C. So now I'm looking at neighborhoods, census tracts in this case, where the index is actually 300, which means 3 times more than the national average for motor vehicle thefts. And so I can get some patterns here, and I can start to ask questions about why do those patterns persist? What can be done to mitigate those patterns? Is there any relationship between those patterns and some other variables? So within a couple of clicks, I have a lot of data and ability to map that data in various ways at my fingertips. Let's take a look at another variable now. Let's look at the median age. I've got a variety of different years where the median age has been collected from the Census Bureau and other sources, and I'm going to go scrolling down here to the 2020 median age. There it is. And again, I can look at index, I can look at numbers, and it's important when you're mapping variables and analyzing data in a spatial context that you understand what you're getting. We have something called smart mapping that kicks in here, and it takes a look at your data variables and it decides, okay, graduated symbol, graduated color, or some other representation. If that doesn't make sense, you can override that. Oftentimes it picks the most suitable ways to display or visualize your data, but sometimes in the case of median age, these numbers at the bottom here don't make sense to me. I don't want to have the median age be a graduated symbol, so I can change that. I can also look at, let's look at the variables that I have in my data set, and if I don't want a certain color or symbol, I can change it from a number to an index, and I can also, as I'll do here in a moment, switch the variables, because what I really want is, look at this. Now I've got the median age as a color and the motor vehicle theft index as a graduated symbol or circle. That to me makes more sense. So now I've got the median age. So if it's dark, that means it's an older population, and if the circle is larger, it means that there, according to this data, are more motor vehicle theft in that neighborhood, depending on the level of geography. Now I'm zooming into the block group level. And so dark and small means older and less motor vehicle thefts. And if it's lighter and larger, it means it's a younger population living there and the motor vehicle theft index is higher. Let's take a look at businesses now. This is another millions of businesses literally at your fingertips here. Is there any relationship between a certain kind of business and motor vehicle thefts? I don't know, but that's one thing we might want to investigate. So here we can look at, what about car dealerships? Is that in any way related to thefts? I know these places are heavily guarded and chained and got security systems and so on, but is there any sort of relationship between those dealerships and thefts? Interesting to examine. So I can see these red dots I'm only looking at used car dealerships right now. Interesting. And I can look at these standard industry classification code. I can look at the NAICS code. I can expand that. I can look at larger car dealerships, smaller car dealerships. I can look at the number of employees. Lots of things here. As you can see in the lower left, I can export this whole data set to Excel. So lots of choices at your fingertips to map, analyze, visualize, and try to make sense of some of the patterns, relationships, and trends that you see in the data. That is the essence of geographic inquiry and the essence of why we do what we do with a geographic information system, such as Business Analyst Web, which we're running here. So I'm going to once again look at car dealerships, new cars now, let's take a look at, and only. And it's interesting to note that you can pan and zoom, of course, and you might need to reset depending on the variable to make sure that you're getting the business location in that new area. Okay, let's take a look at something else here now. Let's take a look at another function that is oftentimes done in spatial analysis with geographic information systems, and that is let's create a zone. You can create a walk time, a drive time, a true distance zone around a site that you're interested in. It could be a neighborhood where there's public art. It could be some sort of water quality testing site that you're doing. Whatever it is, that particular site is of interest to you, and you can create buffers as I'm doing here. In my case, I'm doing a drive time 1, 3, and 5 minute, and then I can create an infographic, and any one of these tiles in the infographic, I'm taking the defaults here, but I can change any one of those tiles to another variable. I can also compare it to the city that I'm interested in or the whole country, as you can see here in the lower right. And any one of these I can interact with and investigate, and I can export and filter and so on and so forth. Any one of these infographics. So very powerful to be able to do this. All right, let's close that infographic. I can also create reports, which I'm not going to do right here, but just to illustrate, there's lots of reports that you can create based on this area now that you're analyzing on the map, and export functions and so on. You can also export this to and save this, as I'll illustrate later on, to ArcGIS Online, where you have additional variables at your fingertips and additional capability. And you can also use this inside ArcGIS Pro, where you have literally 1,100 analytical tools at your fingertips. Now I'm going to create the site so I can save it for later in case I want to come back and look at this exact site again, site being the particular location on the planet that I'm interested in getting data for and doing further analysis in. Let's start a new set of analyses now. This time I'm going to do a smart map search. What that means is I can choose a couple of variables, not just one variable, but multitudes of variables. Now, more is not always better, and the ability to do this, though, allows me to try to get at the underlying pattern, maybe relationship between two different variables. So as I browse around, I've got a whole wealth of health, spending, consumer behavior data at my fingertips. Now, where did all this data come from? This is all populated with metadata, so you can investigate to find out where all this came from. Some of it's from the U.S. Census Bureau and the American Community Survey, but much of it is from credit card purchases that Esri, my organization, buys from companies that sell that data. So it's not individuals. You can't find out what I bought or spent money on or what you bought, but it is all aggregated by, again, block group, census tract, zip code, etc. But being able to look at the amount of data at your fingertips here, you've got all kinds of behavior. Who's gone to the hair stylist? Who's gone to the barber in the last 6 months? It's amazing. It's also slightly disconcerting, the amount of data that you've got at your fingertips. So have a discussion with your students about privacy and behaviors and so on. If you truly want to be anonymous in these kinds of purchased data sets, you should probably pay cash. But of course, during COVID, the cash was discouraged. And so it's interesting to look at these variables. Oh, look at this, grocery shopping, and what store people actually shopped at most often. As you can probably imagine, this is highly desirable information from businesses. If you're starting a business and you want to find out what people are, let's say you're starting a exercise place and you want to find out, hey, where's the best place to start one of these gymnasiums or, yoga places or something like that, you can look at people's preference for exercise and how often they exercise and other variables. Maybe they bought fitness equipment in their home. Maybe they run 3 times a week. All that kind of information is in here, and that allows you to make the wisest possible choice for your exercise establishment. And of course, health organizations love to have this information to figure out where can we promote community wellness. There's so many applications here, not just locating businesses, but organizations, nonprofits, government agencies will use this information to, again, understand their communities and try to serve those communities in the most efficient way possible given staff and budget constraints. So I'm adding a few variables here, as you can see. And the powerful thing is that you can actually do this as well. You can do exactly what I'm doing because you have Business Analyst Web at your fingertips. And now I'm using that, one of my favorite tools, this filter tool that I showed earlier. Now I can see a number of books. I can look at health insurance. Maybe books and health insurance is not a good thing to combine because they're probably not related. But let's say I'm interested in finding out where kids do not have any health insurance because maybe I want to start a campaign about awareness and what kind of options are available to families with kids. So I'm going to filter the data and looking at a couple neighborhoods here. Maybe given my, again, staff and budgetary constraints, I'm going to zoom in on those neighborhoods. Now, it's important to know how you can share this. You can make a PDF, you can make a web map, a dashboard. You've probably seen the Johns Hopkins University dashboard on COVID. You can make the same kind of dashboard here. You can make a story map with a multimedia set of information. So powerful to be able to do this at your fingertips. Business Analyst Web, running online, software as a service, nothing to install. You have millions of literally business locations and consumer preference demographic information for multiple countries at your fingertips with the ability to make maps, reports, infographics, and analytical tools. Thanks.